All right, in this episode, we are going to be talking with Dante, who moved from Texas to Irvine. So, Dante, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, okay, what part of Texas were you originally from?
Well, I moved from Corpus Christi, Texas, so deep, deep south. I mean, originally I was raised in California, but then at 19 I moved to Texas.
Okay, so you moved to Texas for or
I
actually,
moved for a job, so yeah.
wait, sorry, backtrack.
Yeah,
From California, which part did you grow up in?
that was San Pedro.
San Pedro. Okay, so San Pedro to South Texas,
Yes,
and then now back to Irvine.
correct. Irvine, Orange County, California. You got it.
Okay, so some people will probably say, like, why did you come back to California? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. For the most part, I think everybody keeps saying I went the wrong direction. I thought everybody was migrating from California to Texas or otherwise to get bigger places. Couple things. I think sometimes when you're a child and you grow up somewhere, you have some positive memories of it. So I think as an adult, you look forward to grabbing those memories. So you want to feel how you felt as a kid on the good moments of your life. So also my I was brought up to be kind of more open to all cultures and all styles and all races and all religions and all political styling. So in South Texas, that is not as normal. So it always felt like I was wearing a suit that was a little too big or small for me, but I could still wear it. So when my daughter turned 18 and my shared custody for my divorce was finalized, I was able to move on, and my daughter went to college in Colorado, so it made it easier. So moved back to California to hopefully experience what I expected as a child.
Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome back. How yeah? How long ago did you like? How long have you been back in the switch?
About 13 months ago. So it was about June 10th or 11th, 2021. So still during pandemic days. Yes.
Okay, but you've had like a full year to kind of like
Yep.
evaluate.
This is the full year. So yeah. You know, in a given year, there's lots of ups and downs and challenges and stuff. So you catch yourself at any given time in that year, you could be doubting it or thinking different. But after the year's up, you kind of look back like, okay, year one's done. How'd it go?
How did it go for you?
Oh yeah. So I would say it went better than expected. So one of the things I'd done before moving here is I joined some networking groups on Zoom.
Hmm.
So I'd already made some sort of connections, nothing hugely financial, but some connections on there. And then I had gotten brought into relatively soon, once I moved here, into a men's kind of mental health group type thing that I was a networking group. And it was exactly the style of person I am, as far as open, no politics, no religion type talk. Everything was cool. So it kind of made me feel like, because I was in California, this was the case, even though technically I could have found them in Texas. I didn't. And then even though everybody talks about being more expensive, and it is, so don't get me wrong, my small apartment cost more than my large house did in Texas. So that is something.
Yes.
Other than that, the lack of bugs, especially, and the great weather, and the ability to drive to the mountains or the beach or the desert, really in less than 2 hours, any direction, was amazing. So at the end of a year, I was the right move and the best move I could have made for me and my family. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. So you did like the virtual kind of like establishing connections, like boots on the ground, but like it kind of like you made that transition like slowly over time. It wasn't like very like.
yeah, I knew that my daughter's going to turn 18, obviously. And so I started slowing my work down in Corpus and started growing my networking and stuff over here, and even acquired an additional W-2 job. So added to my multiple jobs over here that I started working remotely. So I literally was almost living and working in Orange County, California from like April till when I got here in June. So it had a little bit better effect. It still was tough because when you get here, it's still COVID, so nobody's meeting face to face. So you really don't feel like you're in anywhere necessarily besides your apartment, because you didn't physically go and meet people as much. But I felt like I kind of knew more people. It wasn't kind of like, it wasn't like how I felt when I tried moving to Austin in 2016. I didn't do any of the pre-setup work, didn't meet anybody. I moved over there and thought I just could go to networking and meet people then. And it takes usually 4 to 6 months of networking, talking, meeting people before you can make a few good connections. And by the time that had happened in 2016 or whatever, I had to move back because financially I couldn't survive. This time, I think the pre-setup helped me make it financially, so that worked out as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that I love that. That's the key in terms of making good connections because
Yeah.
it takes time.
Oh,
Yeah.
and it's lucky with the Zoom world because otherwise, back in 2016, we didn't really have that. So it was all like face-to-face networking. So you had to make the move.
Hmm.
Here, I was able to connect with people all over the state of California and even outside of the state early on. So then that way, when I did make the transition, I kind of felt like I had a little miniature community
Yeah.
that made it not so strange or foreign for me. And I was busy working and talking and meeting people and even started doing some hikes and some other stuff. So that was super cool.
Yeah, it's nice when you finally meet people in person after like chatting virtually for a while. You're like, oh, like it's different, but it doesn't it feels like you already know them though because you've been chatting for a while. So
Yeah, if you
uh,
remember, everybody was complaining about all this online stuff. They missed in-person stuff, and it's true. Don't get me wrong, in person's great, but
yes.
it's not that far off. I
Hmm.
get it. Can't just be on calls like with just hearing words, but actually in person and also seeing some visual is great. The only thing that's super weird is when you meet some of these people and they're taller or shorter or wider or
Oh,
thinner than you think. That's kind of
yes,
weird. You
yes.
know, you only know them from a headshot, so you don't realize that there's a whole bunch of different stylings there. But no, it was super cool.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, what about Texas? Do you maybe that you miss where you're like, you know what, that was pretty cool.
Well, I think, I would say traffic was obviously easier. So that was always cool. And I kind of knew the whole map layout. So literally, I'm in real estate, lending, construction, stuff like that. So if somebody says, hey, I have this deal over off of such and such street, I would know it without having to do any research. So I would know, hey, that's good, that's bad, that's whatever. So I could pull triggers, move quicker. Um, I had, I guess I was kind of well known in a sense, not necessarily well known by my competition, so it made it kind of easy for me to do deals and work because it was coming from a style of confidence and people felt they knew me. So when investors wanted to do stuff, it was easy to get them to work with me. So that I kind of miss. Here it's kind of like starting over. Even though I have all the experience in the world, it comes down to who you know, and even then I only know most of these people less than 2 years, so that's not as much as the 27 years I think I spent in Texas. So, and then if you count like socially or personally, being able to drive up onto the beach was kind of cool. Just whenever you want to go to the beach, there's no really parking and walking to a beach. You just drive right up. If you wanted to fish, you just throw out a line. If you want to hop in there and swim, you go there and you just have your car, you jam out in the radio, speakers really loud, sit out there on the beach and just chill and then take off whenever you want. So kind of a different style here where you have to park a long ways and then walk down to the beach and or whatever and have people all around you. There you're kind of just your own little crew. So it's a little different on those things.
Yeah, I remember when we chatted earlier, you said how in Texas you really have to plan with your friends to go to the beach. You can't just kind of like show up at a beach because there's not going to be people on the beach.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Everybody's their own little car of
yeah,
something, doing their own little thing. So if you don't like go meet people out there, you either go out by your own self, but yeah, definitely not going sitting with a whole bunch of people like camping up and putting their little tent stuff up there. I know that I own a Jeep, so the Jeepers would have like this get together at some mile marker. So every weekend, so if you drove up there in your Jeep, you could just hang with them because they made it a standard time that hey, we're going to do this. But again, the beach is kind of thin and long for miles and miles. So it's not like multiple different beaches and pockets. It's just one thin, long beach across the whole coast. So you basically drive up or down it until you find a spot that you want to be at. So unless you brought the crew with you or you set a pre-scheduled time, there was no crew.
yeah, no, that's it. The beaches are different from Texas to
Oh yeah,
California.
yeah, it's completely different, and not necessarily always better. Don't get me wrong. Here, there's obviously more sand and more beach volleyball courts and more like room for a park or something like that. There's no parks near the
Hmm.
beach at all, so there's no green grass near the parks at all.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
all sand dunes and sand.
yeah. That would be kind of cool to drive your car on the beach though.
Right? Yeah.
That's
Sometimes you go
cool.
through the water. Sometimes you get stuck in mud. Yeah, all the
Yeah,
little fun stuff. But yeah, we'd be able to even hold your fishing poles off the front of your vehicle while you drink beer or whatever. Obviously, or however people hang out there.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, so as long as you as long as you wanted to get out and do it, you could do it at any given time. So pretty laid back. Obviously, very cost effective. That too. So.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Um, have you been back to Texas to visit since
We
you?
did. We
Yeah.
did. We went back in December because my wife's dad passed away.
Hmm.
So when he passed away, we had gone back over there. Well, actually, before he passed away, we flew out there to see him, and then he passed away. But yeah, so we flew out to see him right before Christmas and came back and somehow got COVID either right before we left or on the trip. And so yeah, so but yeah, we did. The Texas was good, but because of the nature of the visit, we really didn't get to do much there. So
All right, got it. It was more, yeah.
yeah, we leave again in like 2.5 weeks, and we'll be spending like a week there. So that'll be our first real trip back there for a little while.
Okay.
So we'll have to deal with the hot, the humidity, the roaches again,
Oh yeah,
the mosquitoes.
yes. So it's July right now, so it's very hot. Yeah, in
Oh yeah,
Texas.
it's like intense. You know, even if it says it's 100 degrees, it's a hot, sweaty. 100 degrees feels like 120.
Yes.
And even though there's wind, it's hot wind.
Yeah. No, it's humid. Yeah. Okay. Um, in terms of like after moving to California, like what were yeah, were you like relieved, or was it just more of like, this is new home, or
No,
did
for
you?
me this time I was relieved. I think I had to go back to my past because I think in it was like 2000 I had moved to Colorado. We only made it 10 months with my ex-wife that was there before she got homesick. And then in 2016 I tried to move to Austin, and then it was only like 8 months before the company that I was running in Corpus was starting to fail, so I had to come back. So this was nice that when I got here I had already set up for long enough ahead of time, slowed things down, and set up with the W-2 job and had other options that I felt like it was going to work out for a while. So I felt a little bit more calm. And then with, like I said, some of those groups and stuff felt smooth. And then and being around the area and going to the beach worked out really well. So within 2 weeks, my wife was like, "Yep, we're never leaving." So and I was more worried about how they would be because my wife and her kids or whatever, they had never been out of the states for other than a visit of something, right? So it was a major move. So there was always that back of the mind that, when was that going to creep in? And, it never did. I thought, especially even with the passing of her dad, that it might even pull us more, but it didn't. So so I felt very secure here that we are like, okay, this is it. Walk trails, enjoy the weather, be in the beach. Now, obviously, having a home like we had before would have been nice. But we're not spending a ton of time at home, so it's okay.
Hmm. Yeah. No. Okay. Absolutely. In terms of Irvine, like, what do you what do you enjoy about Irvine, the city?
Well, what makes Irvine a little different, especially for us, is the part we're living in Irvine kind of feels a little downtown feel, which is, the kids don't like it. They want to be more urban or rural, whatever. But for us, it's definitely nicer to have these, commercial, clean, tall buildings around it, but still have walking paths and stuff, and still have, clean feel and a quieter feel. I know some people might say Irvine might be boring or not a lot to do or whatever, but for us as older people, is perfect. So yeah, so I would say as it felt very almost like we were in another country in the sense of like, so different on cultures and so different on styling because we were used to a whole different style. But it felt really perfect for us. It felt very, very very unique. But yeah, calm, easygoing, felt really great. So for us it worked. For the kids not so much, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Irvine is kind of like its own little bubble. It's really interesting within Southern California, when you visit, because everything is very well planned, and like to the T, like
Yes.
to the T, like where you're like, wow, like this is like really this. They thought about the city like quite a
Oh
bit
yeah.
before they like laid down any roads, even probably like.
No, it's so
Um,
amazing to be in downtown, but yet you can walk through hills and valleys and areas to get all the way up a mountain from downtown area by walking, right? Or biking or whatever. Like that's really hard to do in a regular city. Normally cities get built in by buildings. You go to like San Francisco, squished in by buildings. You go to LA, a lot of squished in by buildings.
yep.
So yeah, no, it's the most comfortable downtown rural possibility.
Yes, yeah. It is a unique city, no doubt. I like the city. I'm not sure if I could live there, but I like visiting.
That's
It's
what
like,
most people say. Is I'm not
like
sure they can live there, but definitely. And I think if I was younger, it'd be a little bit less adaptable. One, the higher cost, but then also two, every time you want to go do some things, you probably have to go to another city if it's like karaoke or go out to watch a concert or go like. But here, y'all cities are so squished in that it literally like it takes 2 hours for us to drive to another big city. And that's not even a huge city when we're in Texas. Here in 2 hours, I could drive through like 20 or 30 cities, you know?
Yeah.
So for us, it seems like, hey, even though we live in Irvine, we're in all of the Orange County areas at once. I mean, even getting to Long Beach or LA is not even that huge of a deal. Driving an hour and a half, even though traffic can make it tough, it's not that big of a deal to just go watch a concert or something. But I think if I lived here, it would have felt like a bigger deal. I remember as a kid, my mom would complain so much about the traffic and stuff. We'd literally go nowhere, you know, we'd stay in San Pedro the whole time, right? So, but it's not that bad moving back to here.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Okay. And I guess like what would you recommend if they're thinking about moving from Texas back to California, or not, or just in general, they're like, they're thinking about coming over to the state, I guess.
Well, yeah, and in regards, let's go two different ways. So one thing a lot of people look at, even just from the cost of living in Texas and California, they might say, oh, it's just too expensive or too hard to do. I would say it's not quite that same, at least for where we were at. So in South Texas, when you say own a home there, the property taxes are about 3 times the expenses they are here. So obviously you might have state taxes here and they might not have any state taxes there, but those property taxes are triple the cost. Also, the homeowner's insurance there where we live, it's 5 times more expensive than it is here. So literally, if I owned a $300,000 home in South Texas, my payment might be, the equivalent of owning, let's say, an $800,000 home in California. So even though the prices seem drastically different, the monthly payment isn't drastically different. So it's not hugely different to go. And for example, the apartment that I live in, the utility bills and the water bills are so low compared to what we were paying in Texas. Like literally our home was $1,000 a month just in utilities and water. So here it's more like less than $200 a month. So although I know the gas is more expensive, some of the food's more expensive, there's a lot of stuff that's more expensive, it isn't actually that much harder to live financially than the two. So then you just got to ask yourself what's more important. So for us, for example, if it's more important to be in your home and you don't need to work at a job per se, you work from home, you can live at home and you can do what you want from your home, then Texas would probably still be a play. I can get a larger piece of land, I can farm, I can do whatever, right? But if you are in a style to where you want to spend more of your time outdoors or be able to go to concerts or go to events or be involved in community or work a regular job that's going to pay you decently, you'd almost have to be in California because the pay offers for me to move to Austin versus Irvine before we made the move, I got offered like 2.5 times more to get to live in Irvine, doing a job I had less experience for than what I've been doing most of the last 20 years. Because in Texas, the pay is really low overall, even for being an expert or something in your field. So if you're going to work for somebody, other than medical maybe, it's really difficult to survive in that environment. You may say the bills are less, but the jobs that pay you or want you pay less. And it's harder to keep those jobs. Here, they have a lot higher pay per se. And if you really look at it, I actually make a little less now than I did when I was in South Texas, mainly because I haven't been here as long, but I actually live better than I did there. Financially, I'm actually in a better position the last year than I was most of the time I was there. So it changes it up a little bit.
Yeah, cool. So you touched on a couple things like quality of life, where like what your actual goals are for living in a certain place, like that really depends like on the individual. So like you as a viewer and you deciding for your own family and your own household, so to speak. So it's like a complex, like humans are. We are intricately complex in this interesting way, but there's like a lot of little things. So I think I talked to someone recently from Atlanta, Georgia, and we were in the car and he was just saying how, he's like, wow, it's like a lot different here in California. Like it seems like there's a lot more opportunities out here. And I said, absolutely, there really are. There's quite a bit. It's there's a lot of things wrong with California that needs fixing, but there is still a vibrant community or economy, I should say. So It's
Well, and
interesting.
there's a styling to it too, at least in my opinion. And obviously, I'm biased because I was raised here, but as a kid, it seems to me like 10% better openness to people being able to work with other people. Just
Hmm.
10 or 15. It's like a minor difference. But like in South Texas, it felt more like everybody was competing against each other to be number one of a one-man team. And
Hmm.
over here, there's still that, I'm sure, but there's a slight more percentage of people that are willing to collaborate or work together. And even if each person's on their own one man team, to work together to build a bigger, better team for each project or situation. It just seems like the it could be a humankind revelation. It could be just matter of luck after COVID. But to me, it feels like that somebody that meets me here is more likely to allow me to talk and communicate and experience and be a part to figure out if I have value. Where I felt there, it might be slightly more based on my looks, my positioning, my, family that I already had existing or whatever, that I can get things done versus who I really am. So
Hmm.
it could be just my interpretation of it, but I definitely feel like here I've been able to be treated at a higher level, even though I've been here a lot less time than where I was before, where I earned it and worked it all that time, only because it appeared, and it might be more of a South Texas thing, maybe a culture thing, to have a little bit more negativity to bring down others, which happens everywhere. We all have negativity in our family, in our lives, in our own personal head. But it just feels like the level of negativity gets challenged more here. A perfect example is one of the groups I was in. They did a get together retreat or whatever, and they ended up getting COVID, and one person passed away from having COVID. And uh, the guy that runs that group stood up and apologized to everybody and said it was his fault.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and the idea of that in Texas would be is nobody would ever claim it's fault. It's that person's personal responsibility. They shouldn't have showed up if they didn't want to take the risk.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, it's a little bit of both. We all know that. But the difference between a leader of a group taking that onus and responsibility and all the people being mad at him or blaming him and just saying, yeah, it's on me. I shouldn't have done that. I thought it was going to be good for us and it turned out not to be, is a hard thing for upper level people to do. Where I've never seen that in Texas, that anybody would ever do it, either from legal liability, but even they wouldn't even feel that way. It's like, it's on you, you have your own guns, you have your own thing, you take care of your own situation, right? So that was kind of a unique thing that I think that's the difference I find here is there's people more like that. They're like, willing to take responsibility for their failures or their situations and, grow from that and try to learn from that. And it's a stronger, for me, connection when people are willing to do that.
Yeah, that is interesting cultural difference that you're pointing out, and of course this is your experience. Like,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so
Everybody's could be different, right?
different.
Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
I only meet so many people, know so many things, and I'm probably a little tainted because I had California styling when I was a kid. So it's
Yeah.
gonna lead me to probably fit in better with that California styling if it exists when you're adult. And plus, also in your mind, if you want something to be true, you tend to look for it. So if I wanted some political thing to be true, I might find the news that makes that true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the religion thing, I might find that to be true. And that doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean it's not true. But if in your mind you believe that, for example, being in Texas is going to be better for you, then usually it would be better if you had some scope about the whys, right? You can't just move to there because you think a better house will be better for you. Then obviously things can't make life better for you.
Yeah.
But if you thought about it as statistically or strategically, I want to be able to have a few acres and I have a farm on it and have animals and I can work from home now doing whatever I do that I don't need to be in LA anymore and I don't need to work a regular job and all my family's going to not need regular jobs. They'll go to college, go off, or they'll work self-employed. Like, great. But what happens, some people make that move and they'll be there for like a year and they'll realize that because you have these bigger homes, you actually meet your neighbors less. You
Mm-hmm.
hang out with other people less, you build less community, right? As your kids grow and they want to get jobs, the jobs pay less, treat them more poorly, and there's less enjoyment in working those jobs because the level of even treating a teacher in some of those places might be a lot lower than you would think. There's not maybe as much appreciation, a few percentage points less, but it's just there's not that appreciation for people because there's more appreciation for your own space, your own things, your own stuff, right? It's just how life works is that the more you appreciate things or stuff or places, the less you might appreciate people. And then vice versa here, you're forced to be close around people. So you're going to have to find that value in people, or you'll have to move, vice versa. But if you do make that move and you start missing the people, missing the culture, missing the family, missing the connection, that's why some people a year or two later might have to move back, is because they're going to miss a lot of the other things besides just having a bigger house or having a bigger piece of land. So you got to be careful with those anywhere you do.
Yeah, with neighbors and stuff. I know in our block, maybe like 10 years ago, we started a block party and we got to meet our neighbors, and that was it was nice because we are kind of more isolated, so it was interesting. And yeah, community, I'm all for the community. I'm all for knowing your neighbors, getting to know them, and it doesn't have to be super close, but just maybe even once a year where you're like, at least you have a meal or you chat with them. So you know who you're living on the street with and stuff, or on the same block with, at least. Or
it can make you feel a little better or a little worse. Usually you'd be surprised if people are willing to do it. It's usually a little better. The ones that aren't willing normally don't show up. But here, even then, if I go door knocking on places, people I don't know, go into business I don't know, percentage wise, people are more nicer to me, it seems, and more open to just hear me talk or meet me than they are the culture I was used to. So it's a little bit more standoffish for a variety of reasons, I'm sure. But here it's a little bit more open, so you at least have a slight better chance of making more connections. And for me, as somebody that's been in business for many, many years, I had a lot of money, I've lost a lot of money, I've had a lot of properties, lost a lot of properties. Like in the end, I think the hardest thing to do is have long-term connections. So I think that's more valuable to me. So I want to be in a place that's going to push or promote that life, so that way maybe when I look back on it 20 years from now, I have a huge amount of wealth in connections.
Yes. There's different forms of wealth.
Yeah. My mental health is I can't live my life on my pocketbook or my money, because I can't always control how the government does stuff, how real estate market hits, or how my companies do, or whatever it is. I can't really control all that. I can try, but there's things out of my control. But if I have a really strong group of people that I connect with, which I find the more people I'm around, there's a few people that I'll just connect perfectly with. That bond is there because we're bonded. It doesn't have to relate to money, and that's more authentic and more real. And so that's less likely to go anywhere. Even if we don't talk hardly at all, I know it's there, and it makes me feel like I've got a lot more people on my personal team and my emotional health and wealth and well-being. Because even we know with parents and even with kids or with siblings, you'll get along and then you don't, you get along and you don't. You didn't choose them, it's just what life was. And there'll be a strong bond, but it won't be the same emotional bond to where you help work together with each other, build each other up, or have just life things that'll make it better. We're here, I have that opportunity to find it. Doesn't mean you'll find it, but there's a better opportunity.
Well said, Dante. Well, cool. If you guys are, if you let us know in the comments, guys, what you think about moving from California to from Texas to California. If you think Dante's crazy, let us know. If you think no, just kidding.
I know. You're nuts, man.
Please share your experience in the comments. We're curious about, like, if other people, I'm sure you're out there who've made the move, and so it's it's just like an interesting phenomenon, I think, just because a lot of migration is going the opposite way. So it's always nice to talk to someone who's doing something different in terms of from the rest of the majority. So sweet. What's the best way for people to reach out to you, Dante?
Best way is if anybody wants to just talk, hang out, have questions, do whatever, you can email me. It's Dancin Dante, that's DANCINDANTE @gmail.com, or they can call or text me at 361-688-3663. Still a Texas number, but a California boy now. So
awesome. So the call or text or email, we're gonna throw your information up top and down below. And
beautiful.
Cool. Until next time, guys.